become fishermen and beachcombers. This is our new Eve, our new family, direct descendants of the daughters of original genetic Eve now living on the coast, surviving on the harvest of the sea. Our entire survival has always been at the mercy of the climate. When times were good, we could spread out. A bigger range meant more food. But the Ice Age froze the world, and the deserts closed in, forcing our groups into smaller territories, huddled against the coast. Their beachcombing diet consisted of fish, scallops, oysters, and clams. But the Red Sea became much saltier, making fishing and beachcombing more difficult. Until recently, there was little evidence our ancestors actually occupied the coastal areas of East Africa or exploited nearshore marine resources. This is Sifi Berhait, a geologist. In 1999, he was part of an international expedition looking for evidence of modern human occupation in Eritrea. In the Gulf of Zulu on the Red Sea, they stumbled on a remarkable discovery of stone tools embedded in an ancient fossilized coral reef. The reef was dated 125,000 years old. This is the world's first recorded oyster bar, 6.5 kilometers long and 15 meters above the current sea levels. It's the oldest evidence of beachcombing anywhere in the world. Buried in it are human tools, along with fossilized oyster, clam, and scallop shells. It provides absolutely clear evidence that our ancestors were exploiting the sea.
This is the unit where we have interstratified layer of big oyster and morass shells at the base. And they are quite horizontal. And this was a platform where modern man used to be walking and dumping their stone tools and some of the shells they were eating. There's this hand axe with a sharp end, and some of the shells that have been shed from this interstratified layer, and they've been using this for breaking the shells and eating it. And then when they were finished with it, they would sort of dump the hand axe and also a shell and walk to the next site. But the most important thing, it's not this, because you cannot date it. It's what you find in situ, which makes it very, very important. If you see, this one is an obsidian tool that had been used to smash some of these oyster beds that you see. You don't see both completely enclosed, but have been smashed, and the goodies have been eaten. And these are some of those very important stone tools that have been discovered. This is the first place where beachcombing for marine resources have been documented worldwide and verified.
These shell remains are also a vital clue to the reasons why our ancestors made the long walk out of Africa. On a constant diet of seafood, many more children would have survived. But the increase in numbers would make the demand for food even more desperate. Camps like this one would have numbered just a few hundred. At one time, there were only about 10,000 modern humans alive in the whole world. We were as endangered a species as the great apes are today. When the beachcombing and spearfishing failed to support them, they no longer had a choice. If they were to survive, they had to move. Across the Red Sea, freak monsoon conditions were watering the green, inviting hills of the Yemen. Scientists have always thought our ancestors migrated from Africa many times, group after group, and it was believed they always went north via Egypt and modern Israel. But the DNA trail tells a different story. Professor Stephen Oppenheimer is one of the world's foremost authorities on current genetic research into DNA tracking. By putting together the genetic tree with prehistoric weather patterns, he is one of the first to come up with the extraordinary idea that our ancestors came out of Africa by a single southern route.
This beach is on the west coast of the Red Sea, the African side. Over on the other side, we can see the mountains of the Yemen. I believe this is where our ancestors crossed on the first stage of their journey to the rest of the world. These straits are known locally to fishermen as the Gates of Grief because of the terrible, fierce currents crossing. But 80,000 years ago, the sea level was 150 foot further down. As a result, a number of islands and reefs appeared, which allowed our ancestors to cross, as it were, on stepping stones, over to the Yemen.
Man had to come out of Africa in the end. All his primate relatives had. But the timing and the route were determined by climate swings. Driven by hunger, shrinking habitat, and maybe the first stirrings of the restless human curiosity about the land ahead, our precious group of modern humans prepared to move.
There are two routes out of Africa. The north of the Red Sea, across the Suez and into the Middle East, and here in the south, across the Gates of Grief, into the Yemen, and on through the South Arabian coast to India. Both routes are possible, but to get through to the north, our ancestors would have had to have crossed the Sahara Desert. And at the time, it was even drier than it is today. Here in the south, all they had to do was to cross this short stretch of water, only 10 miles across, to the Yemen. So this was a region they could go to with confidence. I think this beach is very important in human history because I think this is the place that our ancestors crossed from Africa to the Yemen on the first step of their journey to the rest of the world. And this was the only place that they had a successful exit from Africa. I believe the most important journey the human race ever took started here on this beach 80,000 years ago.
One small group of people, one exodus, the single most important event in the population of the world. This is no single trudge across the sandbanks. This was an epic struggle to stay alive, not just for themselves, but the rest of mankind. those who survived the crossing, who didn't succumb to the dangers of the gates of grief, came to a virgin land. This is the new frontier and the beginning of the rest of the world.
The Yemen beaches were on the edge of an almost empty world. Our group were the first modern humans, the first of their kind outside Africa, surviving in this place at that time. This group was on their own at the edge of the new world. Life would have been a bit better for our migrants across into the Yemen. For a start, the beachcombing in the Gulf of Aden would have been a lot better than on the Red Sea.
Unlike the parched, salty beaches they had left, the Yemen was green and fertile, full of fresh water, game, and shady oases, safe haven for a family to settle.
They were probably a small group, maybe maximum about 250 persons. They would have been scattered around in family units of 5 to 20, but networking with the other groups in the population. Anything less than about 200 would not have been viable. They would not have been able to cope with epidemics of disease or famine.
We know Eve and her daughters were among the survivors because from them are descended everyone in the world outside Africa. The new science of tracking is a breakthrough. Using the single unbroken mitochondrial genetic line, scientists constructed a vast family tree, pinpointing the markers, fixing them by time and place. It shows that once outside of Africa, our ancestors split up, some going north and west, some going east and south. Once they had left Africa and the Yemen, they went their separate ways, never to meet again.
When the group first arrived here, they would have had a selection of African lines. A group of 250 people may have had at least 5 or 6 different lines. But over 1,000 years, if this population stayed isolated, gradually those lines would have reduced and reduced. The total number of the population would have stayed the same. It's rather like a Welsh village, hill village, or a village in Italy, where after a number of generations, everybody gets to have the same surname. This process of reduction of lines is called drift, and it happens in all small, isolated communities.
The smaller and more isolated a group is, the faster the mitochondrial DNA line comes down to one. Not to one person, or even to one group, but one mitochondrial DNA line. Some women have no daughters. Some daughters don't survive. So in the end, only one line is left. Totally isolated, they could breed only amongst themselves. The genetic map shows